Hi folks, Jonathan here. So there's been a lot of posts going on about people who are running their units on external power, be it plugged in the wall or maybe a battery bank, and the battery is draining even though it's on an external power source. And obviously that's no good, because the point of keeping it on an external power source, if you're doing an indoor sim for example, is so that you do get a little bit more than an hour and a half's playtime, which is how FlightScope intended the product to be used when it was plugged into an external power source. First thing I want to quickly address is there is not a hardware problem that is causing this. This is unfortunately a user error, and what I feel maybe not a very clearly communicated set of instructions from the FlightScope team, but at the same time, it's not too terribly difficult to figure it out once you understand what's going on when you plug the unit in. So before we go into the instructions on how you should go about plugging in and powering Mevo on to make sure that you're running on an external battery, I want to quickly cover some of the history with the FlightScope Mevo Plus and some of the discussions about that battery to begin with. Prior to the most recent firmware update, which I believe actually was just an AVR update, the only thing I noticed was that my AVR went up from 0.20 to 0.21. Prior to this update, when you had the unit running on an external battery, after so long, particularly very quickly if you were running E6, and within about 30 minutes if you were running FS Skills or FS Golf, the battery lights would start flashing red. And this concerned a lot of people, and myself included, and the instruction manual or the user guide that's posted online on FlightScope's website indicated that this meant that the battery was either too hot or too cold to charge. But at the end of the day, FlightScope addressed this concern and kind of indicated, hey guys, it's not discharging the battery, it's not charging the battery, it is running on the external power source, and it's not going to do any damage to the unit. And so the most recent AVR update that they had released was meant to address this. And now, instead of all the lights flashing yellow or flashing orange or red, what happens instead is, let's say if you're at 100% battery, the first three blue lights will be blue, and the last light will either be blue, solid, indicating that it doesn't need to charge, will be flashing blue, indicating that it's charging, or will be flashing red, indicating that it's not charging. But either way, if you're on an external power source and it's flashing red, it's actually still running on the external power source. It's the same situation as before, it's just not all of the lights are flashing red and giving off what looks like a warning sign. Now, in addition to that change in the light pattern, what I've also noticed came with this new update is that it's also changed when I can turn the unit on after plugging it in. There's a difference in the sequencing of the lights and the whole post process when you first plug it into an external power. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate here, and see if this helps some people and clears up some confusion. So I have a standard 10,000, this might be a 20,000 mAh 5 volt 2.4 amp battery bank, and I ran this today for about 4.5 hours. So you can see I've drained 2 bars off of it. So this might be the 20,000 mAh. And my unit stayed at 100% battery the whole time. And yes, the last battery light was flashing red pretty much the entire time as well. But when we first plug it into an external power source, be it a battery bank or the wall socket, and one other thing, actually, before we go into this, I want to address, make sure you always use the included FlightScope cable. Their cable will either come with a sticker that has a green dot on it, or it will come with a painting of green right here. There is something about this cable. You use any other cable, and it seems to screw with the voltage that goes to the unit, and it can damage the circuits in the unit. So once we first plug it in, the lights are actually going to first go blue, and then the battery lights will go to a green. So we see our blue lights, green battery lights. If you turn the unit on right now, it's not going to run on the external battery. It's going to start running on the internal battery, and it's going to keep draining the internal battery. We should see it now flip over to blue in just a moment. And once it flips over to blue, what I've also found is we have to wait until this last light, for my case, turns red at least one time and then goes back to flashing blue. Yours might stay flashing red. Yours might go all solid blue on all of them. But what I'm waiting for is seeing that last light or one of the blue battery lights flipping over to red and then going back to blue. At this point, we can go ahead and power the unit on. So now the unit is going to continue to run on external power and not drain the internal battery. One thing you might notice is that after a little while of running FS Skills or E6 or so forth, even though my unit right now is flashing blue, it will start flashing red after so long. That's still, again, not a problem. That was actually the intended behavior of this new update that they released, is so that all of the battery lights are not flashing a big red warning sign at you and misleading you into thinking that the unit is going to end up being turned into a brick, because it's not. So now that we have it powered on, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to connect to mine. And I'm going to show you one of the ways that you can verify that the battery is indeed not draining. I'll use FS Skills for this example because it's the only thing I have on Android, and I'm using my iPad to record the video. But one other thing I do want to point out is that when you first connect to the Wi-Fi on the Mevo and you have a 4G LTE plan, you might not actually get FS Skills or FS Golf and so forth to successfully connect to the radar. For me, what I have to do, and I'll explain why, I have to go here and I first have to disable my data network. And then once I disable the data network, it will connect to the Mevo. One of the things I've seen is that the Mevo is giving a gateway address from the DHCP server inside of it. For some reason, mobile devices, iPad, etc., it starts trying to use that for the connection for everything when it realizes it has no internet connection and it can't get out through that, because the preference is when you're on a Wi-Fi, go through the Wi-Fi instead of the 4G LTE, right? When it realizes there's no gateway, it actually reroutes all the traffic back out through the LTE. And so you don't utilize the local wireless because there's no connectivity. If FlightScope were to make the change to stop issuing out a gateway address with the DHCP, because there's also no point in assigning the gateway address to the device, it's not an internet router, that should clear that little problem up. But now that I've got my connection, I can actually go ahead and turn the 4G LTE back on, and we're not going to have a problem at all. So from this point, I could tap down on the connected logo up at the top here, and I can see my battery's at 100%. It's going to stay at 100% the entire time that I'm using the device. It's not going to drain. The external battery will be draining. So I hope this video helps some of you guys who have been having some of the issues. I don't think there is a hardware problem that can't be resolved here. I do think that some of the confusion has revolved around firmware and code-related problems, and also just, you know, a lack of expectation on how this thing should behave when you first plug it in. Yeah, maybe the USB cable was an oversight, and that's a slightly different situation than what's going on with this battery, right? You know, as far as running on the external power, it's just a matter of making sure that the device has gone through whatever logical sequence it needs to go through to verify the external power before turning it on. And if you do that, then she's got to run on the external power all day long. So I hope this helps some of you guys out. You know, I'm really enjoying the product. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road. This is a brand new product that's focused on a much larger consumer market. They've brought a much higher quality product and essentially a much higher priced product to the consumer market, which, you know, the Mevo itself was their first consumer product. Prior to this, your average consumer did not have $18,000, $20,000 to go spend on a FlightScope launch monitor. The Mevo was a great success. I loved it. I was really heartbroken when I finally decided to sell it because I didn't need both the Mevo and the Mevo Plus. If it weren't for the fact that, you know, I have too much crap at my house to begin with, I would have probably gone ahead and kept it maybe and used it occasionally out on the course, because it was quick, fast setup and I could just roll with it. But I sold it, and I am really advocating this FlightScope Mevo Plus. It's a really fantastic product. It's been very accurate for me. Up until the most recent AVR update, but we'll discuss some of that a little bit later. I do think that has changed some other behaviors that I've got some communications in with FlightScope, and I'm hoping to get some answers from them. Mostly revolving around spin numbers being too high, which everybody has seen. I had not seen that happen until I just did this update last week and noticed this difference in behavior in the lights on when I can turn it on versus when I can't. But other than that, as I mentioned, most of these issues, they're growing pains of a new product, and they're software related. So I'm not foreseeing a whole lot of hardware related problems here. I don't think they have any hardware problems. In the beginning, there were some mishaps, some users plugged in with, different USB cables. And, as FlightScope has already acknowledged, unfortunately, that damages the unit. Those are the only serious issues, quote unquote, right, that have come up. Other than that, the unit has been rock solid. I've been using it nonstop, pretty much 100% outdoors. I've had a few indoor sessions with it, but I'm really an outdoorsy kind of person. So I spend the bulk of my time outdoors on a grass and on a mat driving range. We have a few different options at the club that I'm at. And it has pretty much historically been very spot on for me in terms of accuracy, ball flight, the whole 9 yards, and it's been extremely reliable. One other thing I will indicate is after it's been running for so long and it starts flashing red at that last light, the funny thing that I will say is that the piezo buzzer ends up getting really hot in the unit. The piezo buzzer is like a little speaker that makes that beeping when you power it on, beep, beep, beep. The volume on that thing will get so incredibly low, you'll have to put your ear up against it to actually hear it beeping when you power the unit on or off again until it cools off. FlightScope's engineers did mail back, and they did indicate that the component itself, the piezo buzzer, does get overly hot. It takes in all that heat that's being generated, which is why the battery stops charging, for example, and it does lower the volume on it. Again, this is not some major flaw that's going to cause the unit to explode in your face or cook to a crisp and stop working. These are tiny little pointless things that to a degree kind of don't really matter all that much. So I do ask everybody to keep an open mind. Give FlightScope some time here. They've got a lot on their plate. It's the coronavirus pandemic has been a nightmare. It was hard for them to source the parts that they need to assemble these things in South Africa. We've all been patient enough to wait for the unit. It's a brand new product. They launched it, and it's so unfortunate that this pandemic happened the way that it did when it did, because it was a brand new unit for them, and it really created way more turbulence than what was necessary between getting all the issues sorted out with sourcing for parts, getting everybody's orders out. They're back ordered to all hell. They're trying to keep up with the volume. And these developers, I guarantee you, I myself am an architectural engineer, and I'm a software and hardware developer as well. And I'm working from home 100% right now for the past 3 months. It's not easy. I have a 3-year-old son, so I imagine that they're going through the same thing. These guys are working from home. They're doing what they can to keep up with the challenges. And to make it worse, they're testing this thing indoors, but then they can't even go outdoors to go test it and so forth, right? And so we need to be a little patient with them. We need to give them some time. They've made an incredibly fantastic product. I really love this thing. It has probably been one of the best investments I've made. And I'm looking forward to continue using this product and see where they go with it in the future. But I don't, when I make posts and I'm discussing different things and talking about different things, I don't want to mislead anyone and have anyone think that I'm saying they have major problems, because I really don't think they do. If they did, trust me, the unit, I'd have already sold it. So the fact that I'm not going to let it go, and believe me, I was offered actually almost €1,000 more than I even paid for it just the other day out on the course because of how backordered they are, and I just grinned, smiled, and said, no, thank you, have a nice day. I'm that positive about this unit, right? And you can see mine just went to solid blue. The unit has pretty much caught on that, hey, the battery's at 100%. There's no point in trying to charge it. We'll go blue, right? And maybe at some point it'll start flashing again when the battery gets hot. Well, not maybe, it definitely will. It will start flashing again. I can guarantee you that. In just a moment, I've got to disable my data so I can connect to it again. But you'll see, still, 100% remaining. It's going to stay there the whole time I'm using it, and it's going to continue to run on that external battery. So I hope this helps you guys out. Good luck, and hopefully some of you guys who are still waiting for your units will be getting it soon.